Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 34 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. Today, I am chatting with narrator Angelina Rocca. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you and get to know you a bunch better because you've been all over my feed. And I've heard such wonderful things about you as a person, as someone to work with. And the listeners were like, oh my God, Angelina. And so I'm like, I got to talk to this girl.
Oh God, it's okay. High expectations.
Yeah, no pressure.
Right?
No, we're just going to sit down and relax and have a couple of drinks, which, depending on where you're at, it could be coffee, it could be a margarita, whatever's your choice. So it's no problems. But let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating and how you got started.
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's try to keep this brief. So I've been narrating for a little over a year, and so not that long. And before this, I was in network radio news. I was a singer. I've done a lot of things with my voice and performance. And at one point during COVID, I think like a lot of people, I was really burnt out. I was burnt out from the work that I was doing. Journalism is a wonderful industry. It's so important. It can also be really hard. And so I knew there was a point where I had to find something else to do just for my own mental health and happiness and my family balance and life balance. So I took some time and thought to myself, what are the things that I love and what are the things that I do well? And I love books. I love reading. I love romance. I am a performer. I use my voice. I'm great at recording things. I've assembled documentaries, and all of these skills and things that I love came together. And I thought, I'm going to look into voice work. And somebody years ago had suggested to me to do audiobooks. And I thought at the time, I was like, no, I couldn't possibly do, be an audiobook narrator. And that always stuck in my head. So I took a voiceover course and I took an intro to audiobook narration course. And the audiobook narration course, as soon as I started it, I knew like, this is for me. This is what I want to do. And I was obsessed instantly. And that obsession has continued.
So do you find that you're still just as in love with audiobooks and the romance genre as you were prior to starting? I ask because sometimes they say, oh, do what you love, but sometimes it ends up being work and you're going, oh, I should have never started. Like I know folks that will keep things as a hobby and not make it into their professional careers because of the fear of losing that love for it, because, deadlines and requirements and expectations. What about you? Are you still just as in love or more so?
Oh, I'm obsessive. I'm obsessive about it all. And I am the type of person that always has commodified their hobbies, because I'm also a photographer. There are so many other things that I've loved to do and that I've picked up because I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. This is a great creative outlet. And then I learn everything I possibly can about it and turn it into a job. So I've done that quite often. So yeah, I love it just as much. And when I started, I remember, doing some coaching and doing some classes. And I would say, they would say, what do you want to narrate? What are some of the things? And people would assume nonfiction would be the thing that I wanted to do because I come from a background in journalism. And I really wanted to stay away from that. And I said, romance, 100% romance. That's all I want to do. And people would generally say to me like, well, if you had to do 75 romance novels a year, you'd get pretty bored. And I remember thinking, like, no, that's not possible. And confirmed, it is not possible to get bored of it. I love romance. Like I would sit in a chair all day and just read books to myself for fun. So the concept of doing it for a living and sharing that with other people is just, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so it seems like you and I have that in common about making our hobbies into businesses. Yeah, I've done the same thing. And that's another reason why I was also asking, because there's been times where I'm like, I still love what I'm doing as a business, but sometimes I'm going, man, I gotta have that order in, and it's like, oh, you know, so it's like the fun kind of,
Yeah.
not that it goes away, it just looks a little different in some cases,
It
right?
does.
It looks
Well,
different.
it's hard because there is stress and expectation attached to it. So that is the hard part. I mean, sometimes some books are harder to get into than others. You know, you're dealing with rejection, you're dealing with reviews, you're dealing with people who don't like your work, you're dealing with all of these external factors coming into play that wouldn't otherwise if it was just something you were doing at home and enjoying yourself. But I feel like the enrichment that it has brought to my life, to me as an individual, the people I've met, the relationships I've made, the friendships I've made, all of that just makes everything else worth it.
Yeah. It's also why I'm not picking up epoxy. I want to do resin.
Right?
I have an idea of doing these like lovely trays with some stuff in it to, especially like with, because I'm such a lover of books, concept theme to it. But then I also know, I go, Viviana, put that down. You're going to end up selling it at your shop, or you're going to end up creating another thing to do. And there's stop.
Oh, but why resist? Why?
Oh, trust me, there's been times I'm like, oh, look, there's a small kit. I don't need to buy the whole thing. This one comes with its own. Like, stop it. You don't have time.
One day you'll break. One day you'll break.
One day I'll break, and that's okay. In the meantime, things like this, you know, chatting with you for the podcast is all I need and want for the moment. Isn't it funny how sometimes folks, when you tell them about the genre, they think it's just the one and done, that it's just romance, and that after 75 books, you'll get bored. And I'm like, not with all those subgenres.
No. And I don't think people understand romance. I really don't. People outside of the genre, people who haven't read the genre, I don't think they understand it. They just envision these, you know, Fabio covers and, you know, just think of it in a very superficial way. And romance, you know, yes, it's, you know, it can be titillating. It is fun. It's something, it's escapism, all of these wonderful, entertaining elements of it. But romance brings people happiness. It makes people happy. And you know that it will always end well. And for me, as a journalist, for so many years, I was always telling people bad news. I was causing people anxiety. And it was never good. The people that I was talking about, it never ended well for them. And I feel like with this, my goal is 100% to just bring some bit of joy into people's lives and help facilitate that. Because, you know, beyond the happiness, beyond the happily ever after, people also explore their traumas through romance. They also explore their sexuality and things that they don't feel safe to do in any other areas of their life. And romance novels provides that vehicle for them to do that. So I think it's just, I mean, it's so multifaceted, and I just think anyone who knocks romance, they really just don't understand it.
It's so much involved in there because of the different genres and the escapism. I love that. I know for a fact that there will eventually, because sometimes there's these, you know, trilogies or duets where you're like, the arc reaches across 2 books and you're going, I know there's going to be a happily ever after. So for me, it's the, you know, at some point it's gonna get there, but the journey is exactly what I love about it. The fact that I know there's a happy ever after gives me that, okay, so whatever the journey is gonna look like, it's gonna be worth it. And I had someone ask me about it's totally safety, yeah, and you know that you're gonna be happy with that an ending versus the dun 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 moment, right? That sometimes you're going, that's it. I had someone ask me about that, like, well, isn't it kind of like also a bit of the whole, well, you know, they're going to end up together. And I'm like, well, when you pick up a thriller, you know, someone's about to get murdered or something's going to go bad. Something's going to go kaboom. And you know that someone is going to try to solve it or figure it out. So how is that any different? The look that they gave me, it was like, I'm like, yeah, fucker. Exact same thing.
I think it's just easy for people to knock it because that's what people do, right? It's like with everything, right? With a particular kind of music or a particular type of TV. It's just the people can knock things really, they can find things that is sort of in the public discourse about that specific thing and latch onto it and just assume that that's the truth and that's all it is. And People do that with romance all the time, and it makes me very upset. But I also feel that I'm an advocate for romance. I try to get people to read romance as much as I can. There's a group of moms that I'm friends with, and I hooked them all on romance. I was like, okay, here's your reading list. Let's start with this one, and then we're going to go to this one. And now they're all hooked. Because I'm like, this will bring you happiness.
Yeah. That's always a great conversation to have with someone, because it almost becomes like a survey. Do you like this or this? Okay, based on the answer, you go over here. And then what about this or the fan? And then you start kind of like dwelling into the different subgenres, and then where they end up. So long as you don't.
Choose your own adventure.
Right? It's exactly like almost like choose your own adventure. Just don't toss them straight into like a high fantasy, high fiction book 6 in the series where you have no idea what the background is, or something with such a long list of triggers that you're going, when is the book starting? Because you're still on the trigger warnings.
Right. Right. Although that is a selling feature for some people.
It is. But I always say, like, okay, you like spicy food. I'm not going to give you the most spiciest up front. I'm going to try to figure out what your levels are first, because my level of spice, and when it comes down to food versus yours, might be completely different. And you might think the hot sauce at, a basic like Taco Bell, for an example, is quote unquote spicy, and I'm like, that's not even on my register. So
right.
That's where you kind of have to figure that out. But I know for a fact that as soon as someone says dragons or shifters or vampires, that's what they go for. As soon as they hear that, wait, there's a trigger list, and I'm like, yep, okay, we're gonna go to dark romance. Let's have this conversation.
Right. Oh gosh. Yes.
Yeah. And it's all in so much being able to provide them with some of that recommendation, but also finding some of the recs yourself, because you're still reading. I mean, when you find the time, I don't know, because it seems like you're constantly working. How is that life work balance going for you?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. And this is a problem because I am an obsessive personality. This is right. I freely admit this. So, there have been months where I've spent every single day in the booth for 11 to 15 hours working. I'm always working, always, whether it's recording or reading or listening or figuring out how to make my performance better and more connected or engaging with people online. I am always working. And it's hard when you really love it, because people are like, Angelina, you need to just take a break. You need to get out of the booth, find something you love, find something you enjoy that brings you. And I'm like, but this makes me happy. This is my escape. I'm in this beautiful dark room.
That myself.
Reading these like beautiful books, talking with wonderful people. And this is my escape. I'll get a massage. I'll just be thinking about the book that I could be listening to or reading at the moment. So yeah, my work-life balance is not great, but I'm still working on it.
But at least you're still having fun. At least you're not sitting there in the booth cursing at it. I think that's when we would definitely have to have that conversation about the work-life balance.
And I'm still figuring out my capacity as a narrator, because I have been so fortunate to have a lot of books and to get a lot of work and to be somewhat in demand. So now it's like, okay, how many books can I fit into a week or a month? Like I think I have 11 books this month, or in August. And I'm like, okay, do I have capacity for more? Probably not. But I need to figure out like what that limit is. Should it only be 8 books a month? Should it only be 4, 1 book a month, 1 book a week? Like I'm still figuring that out. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that factor in when it comes down to your voice? That's your tool. Some people will be designing graphics, and that's, thinking and then getting it on paper and pen or digitally. But you're using your tool is your voice. And I know what it's like when I'm going to conferences or when I'm doing back-to-back episodes. After a while, I start sounding like this, and that's just not sexy. So what does your routine look like? Well, hey,
right. You get that.
Yeah, right. Well, okay. I will be honest. I've been told that when I get sick, and I'm like, listen, it's not worth getting sick, but I thank you for the compliments. I get that huskier, deeper range, and I'm there. They're like, damn, Viv. I'm like, listen, thank you, appreciate you. but there's still that whole thing that's going on that's not healthy. But what do you do to keep yourself healthy from a vocal tool perspective, doing so many books?
Yeah, and that is part of figuring out my capacity. My voice has been my tool since my early 20s, since I was a singer. And I would be in, a bar in Hong Kong performing for 5 hours a night, 6 days a week. So I learned really early how to preserve my voice during the day and how not to push it too far. So I, work on my support. I make sure that I'm using it properly. I make sure I hydrate and I steam and I do all of the things, and I record early. So I'm usually up at about 4:30 in the morning, and I start recording at about 5:15. And by 5 o'clock, I'm done for the day. And then I give my voice that time to rest. Because in the evenings, I know that it's too exhausted. My body's exhausted. And yeah, so it's definitely a fine balance that I'm working on.
Well, also, while there is a lot of things in common with singing, and one would say the same thing if you were doing theater and acting and stuff like that with the tool, you're usually just using your own voice. With audiobooks, you're doing a lot of different characters. And so, you have the different ranges, the different pitches, the different cadences. How do you go about selecting what these characters are going to sound like and still maintain that healthiness?
Well, I do notice that when I'm doing dual narration where I'm voicing the male voices, that is definitely more taxing on my voice. So if I'm doing a duet, I know that I can probably do 2.5 to 3 hours of finished audio a day, and I'll be fine. If I'm doing a dual narration, then I know that I'll top out at 2 before my voice starts to get really kind of raspy. And as far as creating the characters, I think every book I do, I am building up the repertoire of characters that I can draw from, the voices that I can draw from. So, I mean, the authors usually give some sort of indication. His voice sounds like rusty chains dragged over concrete. Or he has a whispery voice, or a rat. Like, they give little indications. And when I create a new voice, I clip it and I put it in a folder, and I refer back to those characters. So I reference the text, and then I just, I try to be a bit creative. The main female character often it's very similar to my voice, depending on their age, because some characters are 18. So, so I have to work on that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. But
It does. Well, I think it's interesting too, because we have sometimes while the authors, I think now they're getting better at including some of that when it comes down to their voices. We get great descriptions of what they look like, the tall, the amount of 6-packs, if they have blue or green eyes, or or they're chiseled and stuff like that. And we might get some indication of that huskiness in certain scenes, whether they're upset and they're pissed off and they're yelling and something, or in those steamy times when they're whispering up and stuff like that. But that's only for certain scenes, so you got to figure out what these characters are going to sound like. Yeah, so that's always good to kind of have that repertoire of characters in your head.
I think, and I do, like, if there's the sassy friend, usually she's like down here, she's like kind of raspy, and she's like the sassy friend. Or the bubbly one, her voice is higher. Or the cinnamon roll guy, his voice tends to be, in my brain, a little bit higher. He's not really deep and raspy. So yeah, I think you just build it up.
You do, yeah. And it's kind of always like trying to figure out who in your life. Like, I know a lot of individuals. I was in high school, that's the other thing too, like in high school, that had the lower range Sebastian York tone. Scary. Because you're going, dude, you're just 18.
Right.
Which is why he still gets cast. Maybe the author had that friend. I know I did. And then you also had those, women too that are like in their 60s and they still sound like they're 20, and they're up here, and you're going, I don't think I want to know how you're keeping up this energy, because I'm not anywhere near your age and I still can't.
Yeah. Same.
you mentioned you can do a duet, the duets per finished, 2 hours for per finished hour. That's like, that means like you're in the booth for like 4 hours, because usually it's for every 1 hour of finished recording that we listeners get to have in our earbuds. You guys are usually in the booth for about an hour, hour and a half to two, maybe sometimes three, depending how fast your process is. That's still a long day, girl. I love it how she says that.
When I say that there are some days that I'm in the booth for 15 hours, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, I just work so much. I genuinely, I mean, sometimes I will take on another book because it's an author I really want to work with, or it's a story that I really want to give voice to, and I add it to my schedule, and I'm like, there's no other way for me to get it done unless I am sitting in here for 15 hours for those days. So yeah, and I'm not as fast as some more seasoned narrators. So sometimes it is 3-1, depending on my level of exhaustion, whatever else is going on in my life. So yeah, it's long days.
And we're like, oh my God, we loved it so much. When's the next one coming out? Like, it just released today.
Right.
Yeah. And like, oh goodness. I mean, the author has to write it, and who knows how long that takes for them. And then you have to record it, and that's how long it takes for you. And then they're like, they've houred in less than 24 hours. And it's a 30-hour book.
Well, and the process, even beyond the recording process, is so involved and so long. I think, it's like a month to 2 months to produce an audiobook.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
time. And I always say it's well worth. I would much rather wait for the author to give me a great story versus rushing it and giving me it was okay. And I much rather wait for the audiobook to make sure that the casting is accurate as best as it can be, and that the production quality is as it should be if I'm going to pay for a book, and that the end final product is as close to perfect as anything can be in life, and then everybody's happy with their performance, and the authors with the everything. It's just, to me, it's worth the wait. I know that as someone also that likes to, like, when is the next one? Because I want it now. I still have to remind myself that.
Right. Well, exactly. And I think it is important. And that's kind of what starts to set us apart from AI, is that there is a lot of work and care and thought and consideration put into creating audio, right? We aren't just running it through a program and it's done. It's, narrators need to prep the books. We need to think about the characters and the context, and and I appreciate that, hearing that from someone who's a listener, because it is intentional, right? I mean, I all of the audio producers that I know create their audiobooks with intention. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the AI thing, especially with you being generally new to the industry as in the working it versus as a reader. How is that making you feel? Because there's a lot of insecurities, a lot of questions. The concept of, from an author, so from a business perspective, a lot of the authors may be wanting, with a focus on being audiobooks, they want the product to be out there for those that are, listening, that are reading impaired. Also from a cost perspective, how are you managing that conversation? If has it been coming up a lot for you from a business perspective, or not?
Well, people do ask me about it often when I'm doing my lives on TikTok. People will come in the comments and ask me what I think of AI and how I feel about it as a narrator, and if I'm worried if they're going to take work from me. And I know that AI is a thing, right? It's getting better and better every day. They're working on it. And yeah, I think it will absolutely take a portion of the market. But as a narrator, I know in my heart that there is no way a computer or AI can recreate the emotions, the full range of emotions that narrators and actors do when they're reading a manuscript. Because there are some sentences where there are switches of emotions 3 times in one sentence. And, you have an 80,000 word, 100,000 word book. And, a computer may have an overarching kind of emotional range. I don't know how they program it, but those kinds of nuances that listeners hear and listeners connect to, I'm not worried about computers, AI ever being able to recreate that, because human emotion is not something that you can feed into a computer and process in that way, in my opinion. I do think, though, what it does do to me as a narrator is it puts a fire in my belly to be better, to constantly be figuring out and thinking about how I can further connect to the text and humanize it and give a better performance for listeners. Because romance listeners, as you know, romance listeners, romance readers, they consume their books at such a high volume. And, sometimes they'll listen to 6 to 10 books a month or read 6 to 10 books a month. And they have high expectations of what they're listening to. And so when they're listening and they know that a performance is not connected, they will talk about it. They will give reviews saying they didn't sound disconnected. They didn't sound emotional. So I am constantly, how can I be better? How can I be better than AI?
Well, as someone that's worked in corporate world for a big chunk of her life and had to sit down to do those trainings where they're talking about processes and things like that, as boring as those topics are, I know there's been times where it's been read by a computer and I'm like, and I can't even do it that way. I can't, you know what I mean? And so imagine when I'm in the thick of a romance and I'm going, yeah, no, I can't. Is it around? Great. Is it a tool? Absolutely. And I think that we need to start looking at it as a tool. Like we would,
Yeah.
I mean, you may remember when Kindle first came out, like ebooks, it was like, oh, the death of paperbacks. I'm like, no, they're still here. They're still in my shelf. In fact, they're pretty. I can collect those. I can't collect pretty books. So it's one of those, it's a tool. I mean, hand mixers, was a tool. And now we have those big mixers, the KitchenAid ones, but we're still using the regular hand mixers at times. So it's just something that's going to be around. But I really think that having the conversations and distinguishing what is the real difference, and that's the emotion, whether it's the crack in the voice, whether it's the happiness, the joys, the what the fuck of the moments in there. It's important to have that. And and I'm glad that it's putting a fire. I think from my side of seeing things as a listener, I think sometimes with anything, you're like, oh man, he phoned it in, or oh man, she phoned it in. Crap. And that's disappointing. But now you're like, dude, cannot be continuing to phoning in. And not only is there a line of new narrators coming out around the block, and let's be serious, it's more around the city block, not just a regular block. But not because something else that's competing, you guys have got to bring it to the table and really bring it on there. And that's what we listeners want, is that performance. It's like watching a play in our earbuds.
Yeah. Well, and I think that should be the goal. I remember when I started, I had the radio voice, so I had to flatten it. So I would do coaching and, my coach would say, you need to flatten your performance. You need to flatten it. And I think, there was a school of thought at one point where you don't feel for the listener, you let the listener feel. And you just give a very understated performance. And that never felt right to me. I think as a romance fan, and the more I started to do it and the more I started to listen, I realized that that's what people want. They want the connection. They want that performance. They want to hear that what the fuck, not that what the fuck. Like they want to hear that the narrator is that person in their ears. They want that cinema experience.
Or also like even the, like, how would you say it? Like a simple word as, among friends, bitch, right? It's one of those where you can change that word, just like fuck. And there's these things that depending on the cadence, where you put the emphasis, whether it's the beginning or the end, are you elongating something? There's just so much things that can it says so much. And I mean, Darcy, from Pride and Prejudice, when he's like, I love, love, love. I mean, like, damn. Yes.
And you can hear the little breaths. And I know that, breaths are a bit of a controversial thing when people are listening to audiobooks. but like just he has, I think at one point he has it's like his breath kind of catches,
Yes, he does.
right?
He does. For those that
Right?
may not
AI
know
isn't
what
going to give you that.
no, it's
AI
not.
is not.
Absolutely
No.
not. You cannot replace any of you guys. And Matthew McFadden is one of them. For those that may not know what the heck we're talking about, at least for me, I was talking about Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version with Matthew McFadden and Keira Knightley. And I know that's another controversy. Which one's better, the BBC version or the movie? Personally, I like the movie. I had the special edition. That's how much I loved it. But there's that one scene where he's proclaiming his love for her towards the end, and it's that line of I love, it's like however he does it, it's just like, wow, there's no way that AI could ever truly do that and make it believable. And it is that hitch, that the breath and all that fun stuff. It's just fantastic. Yeah, you guys are getting a lot of controversy as far as the whole breathing thing, breathing. I'm like, first of all, we're human, we breathe, right? And in the recording, it
is hard. And I will tell you, from someone who is a loud breather. Even now, like through this whole podcast, I've been like, like I've been hearing my breaths, and I'm like, damn it, how do I position my face so I'm not like you can't hear me? I'm a loud breather, and there is a controversy, and even within the narration world, when I started out, I would cut out all of the breaths in my audio. I just cut them all out. People are like, no, you don't do that because you're human, and you shouldn't be. People shouldn't be cutting out their breaths. But then you do audio, and you're going between every sentence, and I mean, I've had reviews where they're like, can she stop breathing so loud? Because I do breathe really loud, and I can now, when I listen to books by myself, all I can hear is my breathing. So I think there has to be a balance. I think people don't mind it, just as like a little like reminder, oh yeah, this is a human voice.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to something in your ear and it's constantly, nobody wants to hear that. I don't think.
Well, there's certain things that we're all particular about. And I was laughing my ass off while you were talking, because I'm very sensitive to sound and noise. And there's been times where I've turned to my husband and say, can you just stop breathing? Because he breathes so loudly, right? And it's like, and it's not sexy. No. It's not, and things like that. But I think the conversation needs to be, is it the breathing or how they're recording? Because that I think sometimes when the description is their breathy voice, or when they say something in a breathy voice, and they're always talking, and it's just all you're hearing is that. Yeah, that's not cool, and that's not good. There's a happy medium. If you are a loud breather, that's also where your editor should be playing some magic and lowering that part, so it's not as but yeah, I think it's important to have the conversations, whether it's AI or things like this, that is a topic of controversy, unpopular opinion, but I think it's also good for feedback in some cases, right? Like how much, like we do want it, but it has to be a happy medium. What does that look like?
Right. And I think it's going to be different for everyone, because there are people who, I'll just use myself as the example, because that's my knowledge, that's where my realm of experience is. But there are people who are like, yeah, you need to work on your breath. And there are other people who are like, yeah, it didn't bother me at all. So it bothers me. So I know if it bothers me, then I have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's also that difference too of like, and blah, 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 and then you continue to talk. That breath intake, that is distracting, and can be taken out of there. But there's also some of the other things. And I do want to talk a little bit about it, just because it's important. Many times, both the narrators, especially in either duet or dual narration, both the narrators are doing the same amount of breathing in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And they will ding you as a female narrator and not say a damn thing about his.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, reviewers. Let's look at it. If it's bothering you when she's doing it and he's doing it worse, listen, I don't care how sexy he sounds. in one scene or two, or when he says a certain word. Let's not pretend and be harder on the girls for fill in the blank reasons. And I think that that's something too that I'm glad that we're being a lot more vocal about it, is how we some reviewers completely remove the female narrator from a review or a acknowledgement of how awesome the book was. And by the way, the female narrator is about 90% of the book, and you're going, what the fuck, seriously? And then they're raving on the guys, and not to take anything away from them. I mean, a lot of the guys are fantastic performers, they're fantastic narrators, but when they're only in the epilogue, or out of 4 chapters out of like 65, and all I'm hearing is how awesome he was and how fantastic he sounded, I am not going to take that review serious, and B, talk about a disservice to you ladies as performers and as peers to the guys. And the reviews can totally ding on you guys from the most very basic stuff. And I'm like, guys, we need, as a community, we need to do better, especially when we're all with ladies.
And I see a lot of discourse on social media about, there are a number of creators who are talking about it and drawing attention to the fact that there is a bit of an imbalance there. But I also I understand when people listen to romance and read romance and often focus on the male narrator. I also get that in a sense, but yeah, it would be nice to have my name mentioned.
Right. Maybe. Well, so again, when it comes down to the romance genre, because this is a topic of conversation I've been having for years, so I'm glad that it's finally getting a lot more traction. We, as the women that are listening or reading the books, we tend to put ourselves in the place of that female character, and how we would say things, or kind of comes across similar to them. So when the moment happens when it's not like you, don't ding the writing or don't ding the performance, because they weren't as sarcastic as you would have done it, not me, in a moment. That's just not how the book was written. You're not the writer. And it's okay to kind of say, oh my God, when he said that emotional line, because we may not be used to having an emotional partner, and this is how this is what we want in our lives, or when he's saying certain sexy things in the bedroom. But at the end of the day, it's a completely disservice to completely remove the female narrator from a performance where they were doing 95, 99 sometimes % of the work, not just the narration, but even the production side. A lot of listeners don't know that a lot of the times it's the female narrators that are producing the books. It's the female narrators that are working with with their male counterparts, saying, hey, we need to start recording next week. We need to go over what these characters are going to sound like, because I'm going to give them the Southern Texas accents. So you best not bust out with a Savannah, Georgia one on your lines, because those little details are important. And usually it's the female narrators organizing this stuff. And then the reviews, oh, he was great. I'm like, yeah, great. He was great, but hello.
Right.
But that's where I think us as listeners and readers need to start just being more honest with ourselves and saying, hey, if damn, I did this in the past, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to be more conscious effort to not forget the ladies, but also the male narrators. There's something too that I've been wanting to talk to them more often, saying, hey, you guys need to step it up and be there for your peer, not just during a live, because they're good at that, right? They're good at saying, oh, you're great during a live and stuff like that. But that's actually honestly how I came across you, was a male narrator raving about working with you. And I was like, first of all, kudos to you, sir. And it was not during a live. It was just a conversation that they were posting about a book that was upcoming. So it wasn't even during a live. And I was like, okay, cool. All right. You're raving about something up here. Okay, great.
I have to say, because I know obviously there's discussion about behind the scenes, but I have been so fortunate to work with such wonderful male narrators. Everybody has been engaged and supportive, and I really haven't experienced any of those nightmare-ish situations with my male counterparts. And they've all been really supportive. So yeah, I've been really lucky in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, a lot of the guys are fantastic, and some of them are not even on social media, so it's like they're like we can't hold them accountable for not, for not saying anything because they're not around to say anything, and that's fine too. But that's also, like I said, how your name came across my table, my desk, kind of a thing, was
Right.
because it was one of your peers that had done a book with you that was just raving about you, and I was like, oh, that's so nice to see a guy
Oh,
talking about a peer. That's not another
oh, I
guy.
want to know who it is now. Who's talking about me? What are they saying?
Well, all good
Um,
things. I mean, literally, anytime that your name has popped up in any conversation that I've had with listeners, with casting folks, with other narrators, both female and male, have all been
yeah.
all awesome stuff about all things Angelica has been great. So that's why I was excited to have this
I
conversation with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. I appreciate that. I try to I know there's discussion about, the whole toxic positivity and all of that, but
Yeah.
for me in this industry, my primary goal is to only put out positivity and boost up my peers and have positive interactions with the companies I work with. And I make an intentional effort to do that. So, I mean, it's nice that, people are feeling it, that people are getting that back, because I think it's just also from, the industry that I come from where it wasn't like that. And I just genuinely want to make people feel good about the work I do or about the books they're listening to. Yeah. So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, no, toxic positivity. I'm gonna call it what it is sometimes, blowing smoke people's asses, because the reality is that it's okay to say, hey, I love your performance in this book, but your accent was a little off. You don't always have, not everything is always going to be perfect. If it is,
No.
yeah, that's where I'm going. Like every book that reviewer does is always a 5-star and everything is perfection. I want to be like, yeah, no, girl, I'm not going to believe your reviews. I can't. There is nothing wrong with having that feedback that's done nicely about, yeah, that accent needs a little bit more work, love, and when to
Yeah.
do it, right? Don't call them out on a live.
Right. Well, for sure. And I think as far as like, being positive or being honest about things, like I am also one of the most blunt people that you will meet. But when people ask for it, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to say positive things for the sake of it, but I'm also not going to offer up criticism. It's not asked of me because I don't know. I mean, especially for the people I'm working with, and I have so many narrator friends, and we're all in the same industry, working in our heads to kind of figure out our situations and how we're going to approach new work. Unless someone asks me, I'm going to assume that they have it already in their mind that they're working on it.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, and it's not your job to provide that feedback or criticism with your peers. It is, I feel, our jobs if you're going to consider yourself a reviewer. And if you're raving about a book or a performance and things like that, I mean, it could be anything from crumble cookies to the restaurant that just opened up. It's just people are, you have a bit of that responsibility. I mean, even if it's just a hobby, if you're raving about a book and you have followers, you have to be transparent. Are you getting paid if this is an ad? Or did you get the advanced reader copy or the advanced listener copy? Did you buy the book? Or, are you BFFs or are they a client? These are all factors that kind of take into consideration when it comes down to the review. And it's part of the review process to provide some of that, reviews are opinions and not everybody's a subject matter expert either.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the same thing, like we were talking about, if a lot of breath in there, kind of think, well, that might be something to look at. That's everything. But also too, taking it with a grain of salt, because again, opinions are like assholes. We all have one.
Yes.
But not having a yes person to be, blowing smoke up your ass is also good, and things like that. And for you as a listener and a lover of books, and now you're performing them, is there a scene in a book that's, the meet cute, or the first time they're having that banter, first time they're getting to that sexy time? Is there a scene that's your favorite that you're like, oh my God, this is what we're waiting for?
Oh gosh. Is there oh
Like a type of scene, you know what I mean? Like the bantering, or like when they first meet up, you're like, oh, that's how they met.
Yeah, I mean, I love banter. I love dirty talk. I love dirty talk. The scenes with dirty talk are just my absolute favorite. There was a book that I narrated recently that was a dual narration. So I was doing both voices, and it was like pages and pages of this back and forth ping-ponging exchange of dirty talk. It was physically exhausting, but also so incredible to do. So I love anything with dirty talk. And I love when I encounter a male main character who just accepts and loves the female character for who she is. For if she's like a strong female character who likes high-heeled shoes, who's a career woman, and he just loves and embraces that, and that's like his favorite thing about her. I love when I encounter things like that.
Right? It's just fantastic when all the things kind of fit into play. What about genres? With romance being such an overarching umbrella, what's your favorite genre to read on a personal level? I'm kind of curious.
I'm going to say it's a mix between dark romance and, I know this is going to be really broad, but this is hard. So I love dark romance. I love contemporary romance, and I really enjoy paranormal romance. Anything with vampires in it, I'm totally here for. But it's hard because I love it all. I think for me, I'm always drawn to the darkness of things. I like complexity and conflict and emotional depth. So those subgenres seem to have a lot of that. And so it's more like, is this complex? Are they dealing with some deep emotional issues? Is it really fleshed out? Those are the stories that I'm drawn to.
So are they along the same lines now when it comes down to the job side of things to perform these? Are these also your favorites to perform, or do you have something different?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. And I feel like just as an actor, I find it easy to connect with emotional complexity. And that's why, I also enjoy thrillers. So connecting with the tension and deeply emotional moments, I enjoy that. And I can tap into that really well. It's the bubbly characters. It's the comedy that sometimes I have to work harder to get there.
What about a genre that you have yet to work in that you're wanting to just dive into, that you're like waiting for that book to come down?
Quite honestly, I am doing exactly what I want to be doing. Sure, a thriller would be nice once in a while, but I came into this wanting to be a romance narrator, and I'm doing small town romance. I mean, this month, between now and September, I'm doing a vampire romance, small town romance, hockey romance, fantasy romance. Like, I'm doing all of the subgenres. And then I have a dark romance coming out. So yeah, I'm exactly where I want to be.
I love when that happens. I mean, it's great to always say, oh, I would love to do this, but to be able to say and be happy with what you're working on and doing for a living is I love it when that happens.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've done a lot of things in my life. I've had a lot of experiences. I've lived a lot of lives. This hands down is the best thing. The thing that has made me the most happy that I've done in my life. It's incredible.
So you're working with words all day long, literally in your case, all day. You're doing 15 hours a week. Jeez, a day, excuse me. Jeez Louise. What's your favorite word? Which is different from your favorite curse word, because that's the second part of this question.
Oh. Oh gosh, my favorite. Delicious.
Delicious. Okay.
Delicious. I use that descriptor a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. Fuck. I mean, there are just so many ways that you could say it. Fuck. It's just like, it can express so many emotions in that one word. I love it.
Yeah, it is one of my favorites too, for that exact same reason. Yeah. When a word can be used as a noun, a pronoun, an adjective, an adverb, it's golden.
Right? Right? It's a total verb. Yep.
Absolutely. So what's a song that you have to sing to, sing along with, no matter where it is? I'm talking about like groceries, stores. What is that song that as soon as it comes over the speakers, you're like, okay, and then you start jamming?
Oh, this is embarrassing. My favorite is Backstreet's Back by the Backstreet Boys, only because I was in high school when that song was a thing. And I don't know if you remember that video or if you saw the video, and they're like, it's like spooky and Halloween, and I love Halloween. And Howie D is like a vampire. And it was like, when I was in high school, he was like this sexy, you know what this started it? Hey, I feel like I've had an epiphany because I love vampires. I think that started with Howie D in Backstreet Back in the video. He was this wonderful vampire, and I have she's still my best friend from high school. And every time that song comes on the radio, I will videotape it and send it to my friend, rocking out to it, because that was like our jam for a year. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good song, and that was a really good video too, honestly. Even when it came out, we're like, okay, well, I don't think it came out initially around Halloween, but the whole concept was really well done. It's a good one to dance to and sing. Totally adding it to my list of a playlist. So when you and I finally get to hang out at a convention, we're gonna play it.
We're gonna dance. I'm gonna get up. I don't care where we are.
Yeah, definitely a DJ party. When there's a DJ party, like we need to make sure that's on the playlist. But speaking of conventions, you are actually going to be signing at some of the upcoming conventions this year and next year. You want to give us a rundown of what those are, where people can find you? And if you guys if I can't make it, can one of y'all just add that to your playlist and just send me the video?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I will send you a video.
Yeah, good.
So the first one, and this will be my first book convention ever, just attending, is Indies Invade Philly in October. I'll be a signing narrator there, and I'm so ridiculously excited for that. Because I will also be there with narrators who I admire. So, yeah, I'm super thrilled to be there. I will be going to Lovin Vegas just as a reader, and then Readers Take Denver just as not just, but as a reader, as a fan of romance. And then I will be signing at Wild and Windy in Chicago.
Okay. I was about to ask you because they just started a new one in called Wild and Windy West, and that's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was like, which one? So Chicago.
Yes. So no, Chicago. So I'll be going to the Chicago event as a signing narrator. And then I will be signing at Beyond the Read. And that is, oh my gosh.
I think tickets just went on sale for those too.
It did. Yeah. I think yesterday it did. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll have lots of opportunities to hang out with you and play the Backstreet Boys is back again.
Right. I mean, and I'm looking forward to, because I feel like when I speak with people who listen to romance, who are fans of romance, as soon as I talk to them, I feel like, okay, we're friends. We are automatically, so I've made so many friends who are going to various events. I'm just like, yeah, we're going to hang out, right? So I am looking forward to meeting my friends and seeing them in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always great. I'm glad that you shared that you're also going to be going to these two other events, but you're not signing at them. They're just going to, because that's one of those like let's get lunch together and do these, go watch a panel together or go hang out at the bar and have a drink.
Yeah, I'll have freedom to just stand in line and get my book signed. Like one of the things that I do as a narrator, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to run out of space for this, but I buy all the books that I narrate. And so I have every single book that I've narrated up until this point. So I'm going to be taking those and having my authors sign them. So those are,
I love that.
That's my goal when I attend.
Nice. It's nice. I love that when that happens. There's a bunch of books. I was going to tell you, IKEA will probably be your best friend. Billy bookcases are fantastic. I have several of those. And I got them where they're like double stacked a bit because I have high ceilings. I'd take a picture of this stuff one of these days. Yeah.
Double stacked. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm going, I need to replace my floors. This is not going to be a fun project. When I have to move those bookcases. But yeah, it's great to have them physically and stuff like that. But I know a lot of folks are going to be wanting your signature. So I hope that you come, make sure that you bring your Sharpies with you, make sure that you have maybe some book plates too, in case for fun, so people can get your signature and so you can hang out and have them on your book in their bookcases with their books signed by you too. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. And I'm bringing some I'm getting stickers made, and I'm going to make,
Yay.
those Taylor Swift bracelets. Remember
Well,
that?
it's hilarious how it's being like, yeah, Taylor Swift. And I'm like, listen, we all had those growing up.
We did.
I did
I know she did
anyway.
not create the.
These are not
Yeah,
new, folks.
no, it's true. It is true. She did not create that, but I guess it's seen a resurgence
It has.
in
And formerly known as
popularity.
friendship bracelets, I think is what they used to be called, if I'm all right.
Yes. That's the old school name.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Sorry,
had a
I'm
lot of
dating
it.
ourselves.
That's fine. That's fine. I accept it. That's fine.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm making bracelets.
Oh, okay. All right. What are so if we come to your table and after we fangirl over you and get you to sign something and we're like, oh my God, bracelets, what is your bracelet gonna say? Or are you keeping it a surprise?
I'm not sure yet. I'm toying with a few ideas,
Okay.
but they all have sort of a color theme.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah, I guess you'll have to see.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to see. Yeah, I've been making a few of those and I have my supply stash because like as we talked about this beforehand, everything begins a business. With the boutique that I have, because it's been such a popular trend, but not everybody has the capacity or the time or the knowledge to do them. I'm like, I'm just gonna create some fun ones that are audio based and sell them so people can have them for these events. And so I've been working on those. They're fun to make, but also man, when that rope snaps and the beads go everywhere, you're like, God damn it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Isn't it? I mean, has that happened to you yet or not yet? Or have you started?
I have not started yet. I have not. I have all of my supplies.
Okay, good. Okay.
But yeah, I don't. I'm going to start with a positive mindset and hope it just never happens.
No, you're gonna be like, listen, Viv, it didn't happen to me at all. I'm like, well,
right?
good for you.
Right.
But also know if it does happen and you start giggling, I love you. And I'm not doing the evil laugh at all. I'm just saying,
Yeah, okay.
welcome to the club. Welcome to the
message.
club. Yeah.
Commence cackling. Yeah.
Yeah. All in good fun and in love for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do love to do to get to know you guys better is have you tell us three things about yourself, which is the two truths and a lie. And we have to figure out which one's the lie. So are you ready for that?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So what are your three things?
Okay. I was born and raised in a crater. I ride a motorcycle. I lived in the Arctic.
Oh my goodness. She did good, guys. She did good. So born and raised in a crater, you ride a motorcycle, and you've lived in the Arctic.
Yep.
Which
one?
I know, because I can totally see you as a badass riding a bike.
Right? I got the voice for it.
Yeah. Born and raised in a crater. Why not? Because, that could also extend us out some of that creativity and then, the stuff that you love to do in general, just because it's just something different, right? And then the Arctic. Okay. Because that'd just be interesting too. So let's shoot. Is the lie that you've lived in the Arctic?
No. I read the morning news on the radio in the Eastern Arctic for several months.
Wow. I had a feeling that the Arctic would have been the truth, but I was like, let me try that. Oh, okay. See now, is the then born and raised in a crater the lie?
No.
Wow, girl.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a city that was created by one of the most massive meteor impacts on Earth in the history of Earth.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's just very creative in how you send that, because honestly, how many times has the Earth been hit with craters that potentially could have created series? There's a lot of cities out there, but just how you've said it.
There were, because this particular city is, they do, astronauts do training in the city that I come from because of the landscape and how rocky it is, and just because of the composition of it. And, there's a lot of mining in the town because of all of that. So it's a big part of the identity of the city. Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. So it's a lie is you don't ride a motorcycle.
Yeah. No. I might sound edgy, but oh God, no. Thank you.
Yeah. It's always interesting. You'd be surprised. That's why I never assume anything from anybody, because there have been times where, the sweetest, most, you would never think that they would potentially risk being on a motorcycle, for an example, are the ones that not only own one Harley, but they own two. So it's like, they're so over conservative. They've never bungee jumped. No, they've skydived. So
right,
you just never know. Like, why would you jump out of a perfect? Okay, fine. But yeah. So you've done okay. So the riding have you ever ridden a motorcycle at all?
I've been on a motorcycle a couple of times. I am an adrenaline junkie in a different way. I like the adrenaline of deadlines and like the more like intellectual adrenaline.
God, I almost spit out my water. Because I love how it was the delivery. See, this is where AI again could not compete. The delivery of I love the adrenaline of deadlines. It's almost like saying like, oh my God, the loveliness and the I get when I see a spreadsheet in front of me and it's color coded.
Right? Yeah, school supplies. Yeah.
Okay, no lie. Florida here is just started yesterday, the back to school sale with free for no taxes. So it's back to school, no tax season for us here in Florida. And my kid is already in college. He does not need any school supplies or anything like that. And I'm going, I want to go to the school supply section.
Right? I mean, a new package of highlighters is like, it's like ASMR. You're opening it up.
Yeah. Oh, the notebooks are my downfall too. They get really cute notebooks and those are my downfalls. Same. Yeah. And then of course, going to conventions, I'm like, I need a new pack of Sharpies.
Right?
Yeah, stickers. But yeah, your delivery of that, adrenaline of a deadline. It's just like, yep, there's my girl. That's just one of the many reasons we get along.
Yeah.
Before we go, tell us all about the things that you can tell us about what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you that we're going to be getting in our earbuds.
All right. I have a few really exciting projects that I cannot talk about yet, but just know I'm so excited about them. But also, I'll tell you, Hitched by Lauren Beale will be out very soon. I narrated that with Teddy Hamilton. And for people who love dark romance, it is, I'm going to use that word again. It is so delicious. It is really dark. Check the triggers. There are a lot of them, but I'm really looking forward to that releasing. There's another book called Holding On Today, and that's written by Lily Casey. I narrated that with Troy Duran. Lily is an author that I met on TikTok, doing one of the femme narrator takeover things when I first started doing TikTok. And she had me read an excerpt of her work. And since then, we've become friends. We work together, and I'm narrating, I want to say 5 of her books through the next year. And she's just such a fantastic writer. She writes great spicy scenes, but also hitting, what I love most, the complexity and the really deep emotions of these human characters. So I'm really looking forward to those 2 books that are going to be released. And I know there are others, but it's just like I have about 10 that are in post-production, and I just have no idea when anything is going to be released.
Yeah, so, that's true. I mean, there's been books that you finish last week that could potentially be released in another 2 weeks. Then there's books you've done a year and a half ago that are just going to get released now. So yeah, that's good. But lots of exciting things coming down the pipeline for you. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for all of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Angelina, for taking the time to chat with me today. It's been such a pleasure, and it's been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
If you're not following Angelina on social media, I will make sure to include all of her links on the day's post for this episode, and you will find those over at Viviana Enchantress of Books website. And until next time, happy listenings.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Brittany Robinette Leiter, Brandy Schmidt, April Branson. The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Audiobook Lovin. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.